Alright, so let's add 8.4, completing the square, to your table of contents. Alright, so I don't want you to copy all this down yet. We're going to work through this problem one step at a time, so I'm just going to cover this up. And so the problem that we're looking at here is x squared plus 14x equals 15. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to find a value of x so that when you plug it in, your answer is going to be 15. And so you might be able to look at this and say, well, I know if x is 1, 1 squared is 1, and 14 times 1 is 14, and 1 plus 14 is 15. So 1 is actually a solution of this. But whenever we have an equation that has a square, that means we're going to actually have more than one answer. Most of the time we're going to end up having two answers. And so the way that we're going to solve a problem like this is called completing the square. This is what we worked on last time. So what we're going to do is we're just going to look at the first step here. And so remember how we completed the square. We took, so step 1. Divide the middle number by 2, or take half of the middle number. So here, half of 14 is 7, and then we square that number. So half of 14, so 14 divided by 2 equals 7. And then the second part is we take our answer and square it. So that's the second part, square that number. So 7 times 7 is 49. Now since this is an equation, it wouldn't be fair if I put 49 on this side and nothing on the right side. So whatever I do to the left side, I have to do to the right side. So since I added 49 here, I'm going to add 49 on the right side. So now we took half of this 14. So half of 14 was 7. Okay, so this is what we were doing the other day in class. We completed the square, we made the perfect square trinomial, and we wrote it as the binomial squared. Now 15 plus 49 is going to be 64. So all I did on the right side is simplified, and I did the math. Now the whole reason that we're doing this is because when I have something squared, I can take the square root of it. So if I can square root both sides, that's going to cancel out this square. So I haven't done anything to the 7. The 7's still there. And the square root of 64. So now we're going to do some math. So here, the square root cancels out the square, and so I'm left with the x plus 7. And the square root of 64 is 8, or it could also be negative 8, because negative 8 times negative 8 is positive 64. So now, just get the x by itself, I need a minus 7 from both sides. And so this becomes negative 7 plus or minus that 8. So now what we need to do is negative 7 plus 8. They have different signs, so you subtract. Keep the sign of the bigger number. So 1 is one of my answers. which is what we looked at and figured out on our own. And now I need to do negative 7 minus 8. That's because of the plus or minus. I have two different operations. I have to add them, then I have to subtract them. So negative 7 minus 8, they have the same sign, so you add them up and keep the sign, is negative 15. So if I did negative 15 squared plus 14 times negative 15, that's going to equal 15. So I found both answers to this problem. Alright, so let's take a look. This will be our 1B problem. So this is one I want you to try on your own. Just work through the example we just did and just fill in the blanks along the way. So remember, our first step is we take half of this number. So half of 6 is 3. And then 3 squared is 9. So I'm adding 9 to both sides. Now negative 5 plus 9 is going to be 4. I'm not doing anything on this step with the 3 and 4. This step is showing you how I'm solving the equation by square rooting both sides. And remember, when I square root a square, it cancels each other out, and so then I just have x plus 3 is equal to the square root of 4 is plus or minus 2. Now to solve this equation, I want x by itself, so I minus 3 from both sides. And when I do that, I'm going to have negative 3 plus or minus 2. And so what you want to do is you want to split this into two problems, negative 3 plus 2 and negative 3 minus 2. That's the plus or minus that you see here. So negative 3 plus 2, the signs are different, so you subtract. You have more negative, so it's going to be a negative 1. So one of our answers is negative 1. And negative 3 minus 2, now the signs are the same. So you add them up, keep the sign, and now we have negative 5. So now we've found the two answers that when I plug in will equal negative 5. So let's just see if it works. Let's take negative 1 squared plus 6 times negative 1, and we want to see, does that equal negative 5? Well, negative 1 squared is 1. 6 times negative 1 is negative 6, and 1 minus 6 does equal negative 5, so that worked. If we try the other one, the negative 5 squared plus 6 times negative 5, and see if that equals negative 5. So negative 5 squared is 25. 6 times negative 5 is negative 30. 25 minus 30 does equal negative 5. So we found both solutions to this problem. Alright, let's take a look at number 2. So we have a triangle, and it tells us the perimeter is 21. So to find the perimeter, we just add up the sides. So x squared plus 3x plus x, that's going to equal 4x. And they tell us that the perimeter equals 21. And so I want to use this method we just learned about completing the square to figure out what my values of x are. So the first step is to do x squared plus 4x, leave a blank, is going to equal 21 plus leave a blank. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take half of 4. So we take this number and divide it by 2. 4 divided by 2 gives us 2. And remember that we're going to square that, and so we're going to add 4 to both sides. And then our next step is to write this trinomial as a binomial squared. So this would be x plus 2 squared is equal to 25. And now we're going to combine this step that was separated in our last example. Here, we're going to square root both sides. And by square rooting at this step, it just saves us a line. So when we square root the square, it cancels out. And so we get x plus 2. The square root of 25 is plus or minus 5. And another shortcut we can do is, instead of writing plus or minus, write positive 5, comma, negative 5. That means the same thing. And if we do it that way, when we solve, we can just write the minus 2 like this. And so we get x equals 5 minus 2 is 3. Negative 5 minus 2 is negative 7. So these are our two answers. But if we were talking about having a perimeter of 21, if I were to take that negative 7 and put it over here, I really can't have a side length of negative 7. So we would cancel this out as being an answer that doesn't really make sense to this for a real life problem. And so we would just say x equals 3.